With FanFest literally days away at this point, everyone is anticipating what the next jobs are going to be for Final Fantasy XIV. There are tons of content creators out there who frankly are a lot smarter than me, making predictions about what the next jobs are going to be. There are many theories going around about the upcoming jobs. What roles are they going to be? Will they even add 2 jobs this time? But the last live letter fully confirmed at least 1 new job for this expansion. So that leaves one question. What jobs will be added in 8.0? Well, we can make some pretty good educated guesses. Most likely, we will not get a magical ranged DPS, since we just got Pictomancer, balancing out the caster role with 4 options. We probably won't get a melee DPS either, because we just got 2 in the last 2 expansions. Plus, we now have each melee gear set connected to at least 2 different jobs. So that leaves tank, healer, and physical range DPS. And since the dev team likes to only ever add 2 jobs per expansion, I think it is safe to assume that we will be getting a tank and physical range DPS in 8.0. Since, we just got Sage and Endwalker, and we haven't gotten a tank and physical range since Shadowbringers. So in terms of jobs, this is just Shadowbringers 2.0. In fact, I would even say that the physical range job is basically a shoo-in at this point, if we only get 1 job. It's literally the only role in the game that has only 3 jobs. And if you watched my machinist video, you would know that I am basically a physical range simp. I love this role, and I will probably stick with it until the servers go offline, or they rework machinist not in my liking. Anyway, saying that I am excited for the next physical range job is an understatement. So it really got me thinking, what will the next physical range job be? And I have an answer, and from what I see online, I think a lot of content creators overlook it. That's right. My prediction for the next physical range job is Blitzballer. Striker. I don't know what the name of the job is going to be, but I do think it is going to be a Blitzball based job. Now, I have a couple reasons why I think this is the case, and I plan to go over all of them in this video. First of all, a Blitzball is an incredibly unique weapon. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe Yoshi P has said they look at jobs in terms of weapons, as opposed to anything else. And I mean, not every fantasy game franchises use what is basically a volleyball as a weapon. I see a lot of people online talk about other weapons the new physical range job could use, but at least to me some of them seem derivative. Things such as a crossbow or dual-wielding pistols. See, the problem to me is that they are kind of already represented in the game, although a crossbow is not the same as a bard's bow and arrow, and dual-wielding pistols are not the same as a machinist's rifle. I just feel like the devs would opt for something that is a bit more unique and different, as opposed to something that is kind of similar to what they've done in the past. Now, I'm sure the devs could make a crossbow job feel distinct from Bard, but aesthetically, the 2 jobs could match each other too closely, potentially. Now, I will say that this is also why I can definitely see the next physical range job using a whip, like Quistis in Final Fantasy VIII. Whips are also a very unique weapon that is unlike anything that I could really think of in the game. However, there are other reasons why I think a Blitzball weapon job is more likely than a whip. But all in all, on this point, I personally just see the devs opt for originality and uniqueness over an option that is kind of similar to what they've done before. Now, is that to say they would never do a crossbow job or a more gun-oriented job? Of course not. I can totally see them making those jobs at some point in the future. Like, take Samurai and Viper, for example. Those are 2 sword-oriented jobs. 2 different types of swords, but swords nonetheless. So I don't want to completely discount a crossbow or the like. I just think if you completely disregard Blitzball as an option, I think that's a mistake due to its uniqueness. Now, something else that you need to take into account when contemplating the next jobs is what the next locations are going to be for 8.0. The 14 devs love to do this. When we went to the Far East for Stormblood, for example, we got Samurai, and for Dawn Trail, we got Viper, which is a job that has a hunter aesthetic matching the vibes of Tuliolo. So the question is, where are we going in 8.0? Well, if you watched my previous videos about possible locations for 8.0, you would know that most of the hints are nautical in nature. If you played Final Fantasy X, I think you know where I'm going with this. Blitzball is played underwater. Duh. So wouldn't it make sense if the new water-themed expansion introduces a new job that is also water-themed? 8.0 is also likely to be a colder climate expansion due to other hints that we have been receiving, which wouldn't necessarily match the typical tropical areas in Final Fantasy X. However, the 14 devs might not be afraid to make Blitzball more of a colder climate activity this time around. I mean, even in Final Fantasy X, we fight in water that has to be cold, so I would not be surprised if the Blitzball job would have more of a winter theme to it. I don't know, like imagine an Eskimo with a Blitzball. I don't know, that just sounds kind of stupid. I'm just throwing stuff out there at this point. Or you know, they could just keep the typical tropical vibe of Final Fantasy X. Who knows? I'm just saying that there could be ways that they could adapt it to fit the cold. And after the recent live letter, it's very possible we might be going back to Garlemald. Another mini prediction I have is that Reaper will be the main cover job of the next expansion, like Viper for Dawn Trail and Paladin for Endwalker. And they could also split the expansion in between two, where we go to Garlemald for the colder climate and we go somewhere else for a more tropical environment, which matches more of the Blitzball aesthetic. But anyway, essentially, if we get a water expansion, it would make sense to have a water-based job. Next is the fact that I think the job will be more offense-oriented in the physical ranged category. Let's just take a look at other roles, for example. Tanks, we have damage dealers and damage absorbers. For healers, we have shield healers and pure healers. Then the casters have two jobs that are focused more on support because they have a revive, and two jobs that are just pure damage dealers. So if we apply this 2-2 split for the physical ranged role, Bard and Dancer are definitely more support oriented jobs, leaving Machinist all by itself in the selfish damage dealer category. So it would only make sense for the next physical range job to do more damage like a Machinist, which I think would make sense for a Blitzball job. If you played Final Fantasy X, you would know that Waka does insane damage. In fact, I see Waka used constantly for super boss fights. Like, just watch how many 9,999 damage this is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that specific overdrive in the game right there is the most amount of damage you can do in a single move in Final Fantasy X. So Waka is insanely good. They could definitely make the job's party-wide damage reduction skill called, like, Cheer or something, giving a party-wide damage reduction, like the other physical range jobs. However, I think they could also do something cool with an ability that Waka starts out with in Final Fantasy X. Dark Attack inflicts darkness to an enemy, causing them to miss their attacks more often. Now, this skill made me think, what if they implemented something like this into 14? Like, you have certain attacks that deal damage on top of reducing the damage of the enemy. Basically, imagine Machinist's dismantle ability, but maybe it actually does damage as well. Keep in mind, I have no idea how this would impact the balance of the game, or if anybody would like a physical range job that focuses more on debuffs instead of party-wide buffs. But I just had this idea and wanted to throw it out there. Plus, I am not a 14 veteran. Maybe jobs in the past had abilities like that. I don't know. So I think it is basically undeniable at this point that Final Fantasy X is one of the most popular Final Fantasies out there. If not the most, if it wasn't for Final Fantasy VII and 15. Although I could not find official numbers on it, according to Video Game Sales Wiki, Final Fantasy X and X-2 sold over 21 million copies, making it the most sold single-player Final Fantasy Fantasy game series. I mean, this is probably due to the fact that the stat combines both 10 and 10-2. Also, 10 is one of the most accessible games in the franchise, receiving multiple remasters. But still, even with all the caveats I just gave to this number, if you are familiar with Final Fantasy, you are probably familiar with Final Fantasy X, its world and Blitzball. This is also not to mention that Waka, the Blitzball man himself, once placed second on a Japanese best character poll about 4 years ago. Granted, that was because of a meme that was currently popping off in Japan at the time, but it still made Waka very popular there. Also, let's say that you are a newcomer to the Final Fantasy franchise. One of the most popular questions to ask is, what Final Fantasy game should I start with? A large part of the community is going to recommend Final Fantasy X because it is incredibly accessible and modern, but it still has the DNA of old Final Fantasy titles. And let's also not downplay the popularity of Blitzball in the Final Fantasy XIV community. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a community-run Blitzball league in 14. It's called the Atheris Blitzball League, EBL for short, where a group of teams compete for first place, where they typically simulate the game like they are playing Blitzball in Final Fantasy X. This really does show the love a lot of the community has for Blitzball. Look, I know that not everybody likes Blitzball, and although I do agree that I don't ever think Blitzball will ever become like a mini game in the Gold Saucer or something like that, but I do think that it is entirely possible that Yoshi P will throw us a bone and make a job surrounding Blitzball.
I asked Yoshi P, I took a deep breath and I went, and said, so, Blitzball. I didn't get to say another word. He audibly shouted, no!
Now listen, I am sure that Yoshi P has seen many requests revolving around implementing Blitzball into the game. Who knows, perhaps he'll cave in and give us a physical range job that is solely dedicated to Blitzball. Now, the last reason I have for the next job being a Blitzball job is that it is a clear reference to Final Fantasy's past. Listen, we all know that 14 loves making references to past Final Fantasy games. Everything from Allied Society quests all the way up to the MSQ is filled with Final Fantasy callbacks. Even other Final Fantasy games like Final Fantasy IX love to celebrate the series past, and I think the same could be said about 14. Although recently the devs have been trying their hand at making almost completely new original jobs like Sage, for example, they still are interested in taking old character specific classes and turning them into full-on jobs. In Dawn Trail, we got Pictomancer, a job that is mostly associated with one character, Realm from Final Fantasy VI. If they did it once, I don't see why they wouldn't do it again with a job that is mostly inspired by Waka. Alright, so that's the end of the video. Once again, I'm not making this video because I want to crap on other theories for the next physical range job. But in conclusion, I personally have my money on Blitzball as the next physical range job. But honestly, anything is possible, so I could be entirely wrong in the end. We will definitely get hints, if not a full-on job reveal at the upcoming FanFest. And I will gladly eat my words if I turn out to be wrong. And feel free to let me know in the comments if you do think I'm wrong. I mean, honestly, I almost kind of prefer that's the case because, not gonna lie, a dual-wielding pistol job sounds so badass to me. And if you're watching this video from the future and the next job turns out to not be Blitzball, feel free to tell me how wrong I was in the comments. Oh yeah, and one last thing. Sorry guys, this video took so long to come out. I got sick during the making of this video, so hopefully the content will become more consistent in the future. But for now, please like and subscribe for more Final Fantasy XIV commentary, analysis, and discussion videos. And I'll see you guys in the next video.